The truth is, when we're patients, we're vulnerable. We are vulnerable because we are in pain with a finger, maybe, or something else. We're vulnerable because we're anxious, maybe about some test results we're expecting. Or maybe somebody we love is in pain or anxious, and we don't really know how to help them. We're vulnerable, and therefore we're easily frustrated. But another truth is that every provider wants to deliver the best possible care for their patients. Nobody sets out to deliver really bad care. They all want to do well. And so according to this nurse, she's perhaps trying to take care of the greatest number of patients possible and do it efficiently. But somewhere along this road, there is a disconnect between what the patient is communicating to her and what she knows to be true. My name is Marina, and this is Brody, and we're here today to tell you about our journey of taking patient feedback and turning it into actionable insights that improved our organization. So what are we going to actually be doing here today? We'll tell you a little bit about who we are, a bunch of clowns, obviously. We will tell you about our challenge as we found it at the beginning of 2018 and the investigation that followed into that challenge. We will tell you about developing the solution, and the solution took us about a year to implement. It is technically challenging. This session is really supposed to be for all levels, so we omitted a few really heavy technical details, but by all means, if you guys have questions afterwards about the nuts and bolts of the solution that we developed, we'll be happy to chat after the session or during Q&A. We hope to not bore you with slides too much. Everybody loves demos, so we're going to jump into Tableau and actually demo the solution that we were able to develop. And we will talk a little bit about the impact that this solution or dashboard had on our organization. Obviously, all the applause that we got. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So who are we and why are we standing here in front of you today? Marina and Brody, again, striking our nerdiest, baddest pose. This is at TC last year, which was in New Orleans, which is our hometown. Hopefully some of you were there and able to enjoy New Orleans a little bit. We absolutely love it. But by the way, they had those photo booths last year with the Tableau, cool Tableau backgrounds, and they don't have those this year, unless somebody can point me to. Anyway, hopefully next year they will bring them back. Those are really cool. But outside of being part-time models, I am the manager of the data visualization team at the Ochsner Health System, and Brody is the team lead. We are responsible for 10 data visualization and business intelligence developers. We have both been at Ochsner for a little bit over almost 3 years, and we have really seen our team grow from just the 2 of us a couple of years ago to now 10 developers. They told us when we were preparing for the session that it's good practice to include some fun facts. So fun fact about Brody is that he's a proud expecting father of cute little twin girls.
Pray for me. Yeah.
And I'm the mother of dragons. Now, I wish though. Just the mother of this mutt right here. Pictures don't really have anything to do with the presentation that is to follow, but if you don't remember anything about this session, please remember we showed you babies and dogs. Go vote for our session on the app. All right, so what is Ochsner Health System? If you visited New Orleans for vacation or maybe for last year's TC, and hopefully you ventured outside of the French Quarter, which, by the way, I recommend. There is so much more to the city than just the French Quarter. But if you did, chances are you have seen signs for Ochsner everywhere in New Orleans. We are the largest healthcare system, not only in New Orleans, but in the state of Louisiana, and we also have a few campuses in other states as well. In 2018, we cared for more than 800,000 patients. We have 15 owned or managed hospitals and 22 affiliated hospitals, over 100 healthcare centers or clinics, urgent care clinics, and we're also the largest private employer in the state of Louisiana with over 25,000 people employed. All operational and strategic decisions at Ochsner are governed by 5 values, and the values you see kind of here represented by these icons The values are patients first, integrity, excellence, compassion, and teamwork. But of course, first and foremost, putting patients first. It's the main value that we're governed by. But what does it really mean to put patients first? If you think about any experience that you may have had in your life as a patient, as a customer really, but we're talking about healthcare right now, so as a patient, you probably will realize that the entire experience is made up of little interactions. It's not just one thing, it's a combination of many different things. For example, you may have gone online to make an appointment and it was super easy. The interface was very easy to navigate. You were able to find a lot of slots that were convenient for you and you booked that perfect one. Or maybe you picked up the phone and called to make an appointment and the person on the other end of the line was very polite and helpful and was able to get you in right away and maybe fun or compassionate, and you had an overall good interaction with the person making the appointment for you. Or maybe it was this smooth process when you came to the office and you were checking in, unlike Larry David here. You didn't have to fight with a nurse, and she actually pronounced your name right. Or maybe it was the amount of time that the provider spent with you, right? They paid attention to you, they spent enough time with you, they answered all of your questions, they didn't rush through the visit. Or maybe it was the nurse that followed up the next day to see how you're doing, how are you feeling, are you taking your medication? Or maybe it was how easy it was to fill the prescription at the pharmacy. Maybe it was already waiting for you when you got to the pharmacy, right? So if you think about those experiences, you will realize that each encounter within the healthcare system, when you come in as a patient, is combined of many different interactions, a lot of different interactions. And if one of them goes wrong, if one of them is negative, then your whole experience is kind of ruined and you will probably remember it. So for us at Ochsner, it is very important to make every interaction count. As you can see from this quote, this is a quote by our COO, Mike Hulefeld. Not really a quote, really more of a motto. Make every interaction count. But if this is your goal, if this is what you're trying to improve and pay attention to, how do you know that you're really doing it? How do you know that you are making your patients happy by making every single interaction count? How do you know if you're doing well or not so well? And how do you know if you're improving? So I imagine that most of you here, if you registered for this session, are probably in healthcare and are familiar with some patient satisfaction reporting. But if you're not, then I will just give a brief overview of how patient satisfaction reporting works. There are several different types of surveys that patients can fill out after they have an interaction with a healthcare system, whether it's a hospital encounter or an outpatient encounter. But there are two that people talk the most about, and those are HCAHPS and CGCAHPS, which stands for Hospital Consumer Assessment and Clinical and Group Consumer Assessment. There are a few other ones, such as ED assessments, outpatient, ambulatory surgery, but CGCAHPS and HCAHPS are the ones that people kind of pay attention to the most. And basically, all of those surveys are aimed to answer two questions. One, how happy is the patient with the care they received both inside and outside of your walls? And B, how likely are they to recommend your facilities or your providers, your service to others, to their friends and family? So how do we collect these surveys? How does the data flow work? Most healthcare organizations work with some sort of a third-party vendor, and at Ochsner we partner with Press Ganey to send out surveys and collect surveys on our behalf. Press Ganey is the vendor that's most widely used for this type of work. So a patient comes in and has an encounter at Ochsner, whether it's a hospital encounter again, or maybe they just go for an annual checkup. We send a limited amount of information to Press Ganey, such as the date of service and perhaps who the provider was and some contact information for the patient. Press Ganey then sends out a survey, an appropriate survey on our behalf. And those surveys are pretty lengthy. There are quite a number of questions that can be answered on a scale from 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. And there is also space to leave comments. And I say comments. I know a lot of you are thinking free text fields, notoriously hard to analyze, basically impossible to draw any conclusions from, but they're there. But the patient then sends the survey back to Press Ganey. they load that information, process that information into their database, and then they perform some calculations on that data. So what type of calculations? First of all, they calculate our top box score. And what is a top box score? Basically, on a scale from 1 to 10, for example, how likely are you to recommend this provider? On a scale from 1 to 5, 5 would be the best possible answer they can give. So that will be considered top box. Or on a scale from 1 to 10, 9 and 10 will be considered top box. So then Press Ganey calculates how many top box responses we got and divides it by the total number of responses received. So basic calculation, nothing really complicated there. But they don't stop there. And they actually benchmark you against other hospitals in the United States. Because they partner with so many healthcare organizations, they have enough data to provide that benchmarking information. And basically, they tell you how well or how badly you're doing in comparison to your peers. Then they report those results back in their reporting platform, back to the provider. They also report those results to the governing bodies, such as CMS. And then eventually, that information gets reflected back to the patient. Which is great, right? As patients, we need to be empowered to make the best decision possible about the care that we receive and who our healthcare provider should be and what hospital we should be going to if we have problems. So that's great for the patients. But as providers, how can we take this information and improve? How can we take this information and understand where our gaps are? Because all we really see is that score, right, that is reflected back to the patient. So for a large organization like ours, there are different levels of leadership where the change can happen. So for example, if you're an executive or a member of the senior leadership team and you're responsible for setting the strategy for the entire organization, you may want to view that overall score for the organization, but then maybe you want to compare your campuses, right, or regions. So Ochsner has a lot of different regions in the state of Louisiana and other states as well. So you want to see how you perform across all regions, where your weak performers are, where the strong performers are. Or maybe you want to be able to compare your service lines. So which service line is doing great and we can go and learn there, and which ones may be underperforming. But then as a service line leader, I may want to go a little bit deeper, right? I want to be able to compare my departments, for example. If I am a cancer services leader, I want to understand which department is doing better than others. We are providing a similar type of service, so why is one department performing better than others? I want to be able to understand that. I also want to be able to have a conversation with my providers about how they potentially can improve. So to make the long story short, we need to be able to aggregate the data at different levels of aggregation. So at the system level, regional level, department level, and provider level. But it doesn't stop there. The main action, the main improvement happens in the clinics and providers and their teams, right? So if I'm a clinic manager or an experience of care coach, so at Ochsner, we have a position that is called Experience of Care Coach. Those are the people that actually go out to practices and mentor providers and their clinical staff about what they can be doing better. So if I'm a clinic manager or a coach, I really need to be able to drill down to the encounter level information and really understand where my patient flow broke down, where my opportunities are. I want to be able to read those comments to really get the sentiment that patients are putting into their scores. So overall, if we want to really use the data to improve our experience of care, we need to be able to aggregate the data at different levels, but most importantly, drill down to the very actionable encounter level, patient level data, and be able to read those comments and put those to good use. So what's the problem? We do it all the time, right? We aggregate things in Tableau, we build drill downs. Well, it wasn't so easy. We started out by trying to use the Press Ganey native reporting platform. And it turned out that they had multiple levels of aggregation, but we really didn't have the clinical context behind what happened, behind those low scores. So if somebody got a low score, for example, region A is underperforming, we really couldn't get enough detail about what actually happened, or if provider X received a bad survey, we really didn't know who was the registrar for that specific patient, who was the nurse that helped them, because Press Ganey simply did not have that information, right? So we were missing very essential pieces of information that come with that clinical context that Press Ganey did not possess. Additionally, they did not report on patient comments, which is those they're very hard to analyze, but those are those nuggets of gold that you can actually use to understand at the deepest level where your process is breaking down. Then we tried a different approach, and we were requesting regular extracts of our data from Press Ganey that came in twice a month. And then there was a team of people who were tasked with compiling those extracts, and it's a lot of data that we're talking about, a lot of patient encounters, compiling those results into reports. It was done in Excel back then, and of course those Excel files then would, this is a good example, then they would get emailed to service line leaders and then trickle down to their teams. Again, not a lot of detail behind it. We were able to aggregate, but not really drill down to the very actionable data. And of course, the output, the visual output, there are some examples of it, left much to be desired, right? So it was very cumbersome for the experience of care team that would rather go out and mentor and work with providers to actually improve instead of compiling data. Yeah, you can see some trends, but no context. Again, very difficult to make actionable. So it is at this point that the experience of care team contacted analytics to help them come up with an automated solution that would be easily scalable as our organization grew and added more partners, more hospitals, and more providers. So I'll hand it over to Brody to talk about the actual solution.
Absolutely, thank you, Marina. So moving towards the solution. So the first part in developing the solution is we really need to understand where we were today, right? So we had multiple whiteboarding sessions to discuss with multiple teams, and this is a complex problem to solve. When sending data to Press Ganey and receiving it back to our organization, we had a lot of complexity involved. This was not an easy process to really tackle. There were a lot of areas where we had manual interventions to supply data to the vendor and return it. So we needed to really figure out where we can automate things first off. And then beyond that, we knew we wanted to really provide a great solution to the organization. We wanted to think about the roles that we had in the organization, those executives, those clinic managers, those supervisors, and of course the patient experience coaches. I really want to tailor the dashboard to those needs so we can solve problems and create something really actionable for the organization than just providing a number. So we knew next step, we needed to take this data and load it into a database. We need to get off these spreadsheets for sure. So we thought, why don't we look into Caboodle? And what Caboodle is Epic's data warehouse. We're an Epic shop. And what Caboodle allows us to do is join in clinical data from our Epic EMR system, such as encounter information like admissions, visits, patient information, anything related to that encounter, what happened at that visit, who was the registrar, who was the provider. And we're also able to bring in non-clinical data, such as payer claim files or financials or any of our patient experience surveys as well. And having the data in one location as like a single source of truth is invaluable for an organization and able to get so many more insights out of. Caboodle also allows us to load and process XML files. And these XML files are files that are being sent to us from our patient experience vendor, Press Ganey. We're able to load them using their standard SSIS packages. And the result is we have a single survey fact with other question dimension and other clinical dimensions surrounding that survey fact as like a solid foundation for us to build out our analysis and reporting, which is great as moving forward. But it's not really sufficient for the level of reporting that we really need as an organization. So our first step is working through the data that we're getting from Press Ganey and pulling out our demographic information from that survey fact. We need to identify everything that we possibly can from that encounter, from the survey, what Press Ganey is sending us back. We need to know who that provider is. We need to know who the registrar is and who the nurse was at the time of that encounter, and just load that into a table structure for the first step. But then we know survey data is not clean. There are a lot of gaps in the data, and even the data that we get back from Press Ganey has gaps. And so that's the real benefit in being able to enrich our demographic information and tie that back into the data that we're being provided from Press Ganey. And it's an easy step for us since Caboodle already has our clinical data and our non-clinical data. Merging the two is an easier process. And this is one of the real benefits of this project, tying clinical data and non-clinical data together and see new results and analysis. Imagine being able to do a correlation between a provider's amount of time that you're waiting for an appointment with the responses of that survey score. There's so many areas where we can really find new insights in our data set that really drive up that patient satisfaction score, patient overall experience. And so the next step is, now that we have our enriched demographics, we're ready to tie that data to our survey responses. And this is the real meat and potatoes, really, of what we want to analyze and visualize. And where I see a lot of organizations really stop and start visualizing the data at this point. They start building Likert scales and just see what are the responses overall for the organization. But here at Ochsner, we want to take it a step further. We really want to benchmark ourselves on a national scale, like Marina mentioned earlier. And in doing so, we need the next two iterations calculate the top box score and the percentile rank. And the top box score is, as we mentioned, it is the top of the total response options for a given question. So for the example, rate the hospital, 0 to 10. A 9 and a 10 is considered top box. Every other question is not, as part of that data set. The other piece is calculating that rank, that percentile rank, and seeing across the national level, where do we really fall amongst the organization. And I'm going to explain that a little bit more in the next slide. So why is the percentile rank so important? Really, why is it? So suppose you want to know, how do patients view your hospital? How do they rate your hospital on that scale 0 to 10? And suppose we have 120 respondents for a given set of criteria that answer the question, and 115 of those rate with a top box score of a 9 or a 10. That score comes out to a 95.8. Wow. You guys are thinking you're doing an awesome job. 95.8, like your organization is doing an excellent job. You're taking care of your patients. But it's not until you bump up that score against the percentile ranking across the national group that you really understand how well you're doing. Well, that rank actually comes out to an 84, which is a B. That's still pretty good, actually, if you're considering your organization. But let's say we drop the survey down a little bit and we didn't get 115 top box score. We actually got 113. Let's bring it down to. Now our score comes out to a 94.1. And 94.1 actually comes out to a 46 rank. Wow, that's a lot further down in the spectrum. And this is why every interaction really matters. It's why every interaction counts with a patient. And we at Ochsner really want to not become complacent with the level of satisfaction that we provide our patients. And so monitoring these extra level of insights really help us stay engaged and focused on our patients and trying to drive feedback and results. And so now I'd like to take you through the dashboard, and I really want to show you some fun stuff that we've developed. I'm going to go through 3 dashboards in this workbook. One of them is really tailored towards our executives, another one for our clinic managers and supervisors, and the last one really for our patient experience coaches. And I want to mention this data is completely fabricated for the purposes of this demo. So
we actually had our entire team comb through all the comments and figure out what was not good to show.
Right.
Which was basically everything. So yeah, this is a fake data set.
To mention, they also added a ton of comments also. So you see a lot of duplication in this data set, so just to make it look really reactive. So let me refresh this really quick. Okay. So everyone can see, yes. So this first dashboard is our executive overview. This gives a nice view for our executives to get like a bird's eye view of how are we doing as an organization for a given survey question. We have a list of a few survey questions that are available here. There we go, I'll zoom in a little bit. So we have HCAPs, CGCAPs, outpatient, ED, and ambulatory surgery. So an executive can log in and basically use this drop down to pick what type of survey they want to look at. Right now, we'll just focus on HCAPs. We won't change anything. But we have a ton of colors in here, and I really push back on this color palette, but our executives really love the green, yellow, and reds, right? So this is what we have. I hope no one's colorblind in here. You might struggle a little bit. But these colors actually do tell a great story, right? So we can see where we set targets for our organization for each individual region along with the system. And we want to know where we've hit our targets or where we're close to hitting it. We're above our threshold, but we're not quite there. We're very close to making it. And those that are below threshold, below 50%, those we really need to work on and try to improve our scores. And so one that I want to really highlight is this tool. I'm going to go into this tooltip. So for region 3 here, in the tooltip, I've made this very large, so hopefully folks can see. You get a wealth of information. You get to know what is the survey question that we're looking at, recommend the hospital, what's the region, what year are we looking at, what's our rank is a 54. Our total top box percent is a 73.4, and the total number of surveys. And then you get the nice breakdown of each of the color coding of what does it take to hit a target, what does it take to hit at the threshold or below the threshold if it's less than 50. Another thing our users really liked was having the full question written out there. In prior Excel world, we had just the abbreviated question, and a lot of people were questioning what is the actual question that gets sent to the patient. We don't even know what it is in many cases, so it's nice to be able to see, would you recommend this hospital to your friends and family, in like clear, transparent form. Another thing that we added down here was, what is it going to take to hit that goal? So right now, a top box, to hit our rank, it's a 54. We're at a 73.4. To hit our goal, we need a 74.7, and that'll give us that 60th percentile rank that we want to make it there. And so how many surveys do we need to get to that point? Well, we did a calculation on the back end to determine we need at least 105 additional top box surveys to hit that number. We can't go back in history and bring in new top box surveys. We can't edit that. But going forward, if we just get 105 additional ones, we'll hit that number. So it's really nice to show that this is something that we can achieve within the remaining time of the year. I'm going to dissect this in a little bit more in another page, so we'll keep this number in mind. I'll scroll down and show some other functionality down here. So we at Ochsner are really focused on a consumer journey. We want to know as much as possible about our patients. Try to get the right angle on this one. Yeah. So we want to know as much as possible about our patients, so we developed a patient profile. We're trying to determine, based on demographic information of ages and the adaptation of using like mobile services or digital services, e-pre-check or other pieces, to see where our patients are scoring us and how are they doing. And it's also showing at a payer level for that given demographic where our patients scoring. So we can really try to target those areas and see if there's something we can do to really improve that level of satisfaction. Maybe there's a different strategy for those kind of folks. So our executives are really, really in tune to looking at the data at that level. So I want to go on to the next page and show you our by department tab. This is by far the most used dashboard in this workbook in the organization, really. And it's because it can answer so many questions to whoever's needing. So I'm going to go through and cover the filters, and then I'll go through a little bit more in the details in a second. So the filters at the top, we have the HCAPs, CGCAPs, outpatient ED, ambulatory surgery, but we also have a few additional ones. We have the urgent care, the NICU, the pediatric, and also the medical equipment. And so by changing any one of these, it'll change the dashboard to just show that survey and that level of detail. We have the drop down for a given region. I'm going to go ahead and change that to region 3 because that's the one we want to analyze in a second. And as we change that, we get to dive into departments. We're going to see a list of departments just for that region. We can choose a list of service lines. Suppose you have cardiology here or some other options as well, primary care. You can change it to a specific payer if needed to see commercial or Medicare, Medicaid. We can change the granularity of the data that's calculating the percentile rank from month to quarter to year, but we do have all the information below here as well. Or we can even change the survey from just the individual survey question or the survey domain question, because there are some survey questions can roll up to a given domain if those are a little bit familiar on the Press Ganey side. So an example would be this communication about pain. These two questions will roll up and actually become the survey domain question, which you can see on this left-hand side as like trends for this region. How are we doing over time at a quarter level? And I think that level of insight really adds a lot of value to our users to see how are we progressing as a whole for any one of those given categories. And as we look at the center part of the dashboard, you can see same information that's provided on the prior page. We can look at just January as a whole and see what our rank is, what is our top box, what is the number of surveys, and then that nice breakdown of how close we are to hit those numbers. I'm going to go and click the year-to-date value for recommend the hospital, because that's what we were looking on the other page. And as I select this square, I can scroll down and see a list of what departments make up that region. And so the real benefit of this is for patient experience coaches or whoever is leading this region can really look at these departments and say, these guys, Department 1, 49, 41, are doing a great job. They're doing an awesome, they're above our target for this region. Let's see if we can leverage what they're doing in some of our underperforming regions. And so you can look at that drop down at the bottom and maybe work with these regions to see if there's some way we can improve patient satisfaction. Just looking at the department level, something like this is really valuable for an organization to see. The other cool thing, just to quickly show, is being able to highlight at a glance for a region, just to quickly see the areas that are, below threshold, where we really need to do a lot of work. So at a higher level, this is a really nice insight to just quickly grab. But so these first two tabs of the dashboard, of these two dashboards in this workbook, we really focused on delivering everything that was being provided in the Excel file plus more. And we thought, numbers are great, right? Percentile rank, top box, these are awesome things to capture for an organization, but can we go deeper? Can we look at our patient comments and glean a little bit of information and understand what our patients are telling us? How can we really improve? And so in this next dashboard, I'll show you how we've taken our patient comments, and what we've done is we've parsed out those comments and leverage Press Ganey's sentiment analysis that they're providing us. So they're providing us the comment itself, and if that overall comment is positive or negative or neutral, some form of neutral, mixed or open, we're taking that data and bringing it into the dashboard as well. And we're parsing out that comment into a set of words and removing all of the stop words, words that we don't feel are going to add value to the organization as a whole, words that we don't think that you can take action on. So I'm excluding words like I or me or my, myself, we, our, and that list is available for users to quickly see in the dashboard. Same at the top in the other dashboards, we have a list of filters. We have the survey name, so you can change to a specific survey if you want to see the comments for those. We can change the region. We can change a list of departments, service line, payer. But we have a few other things here. We have selecting a provider. So you can select one individual provider and see comments that patients have provided for that specific provider, and maybe use this as like a discussion with them to see if we can improve their patient experience. Same thing for our registrars, the person that's actually performing the check-ins. This really would help out in like evaluations. And also we have the sentiment if you want to focus on just negative or neutral or positive comments. One thing I want to show in this word cloud, it's completely interactive. So our patient experience coaches spend quite a bit of time going through this and really trying to get as much information as they can about their patient comments before they go to their region or department to discuss possible ways we can improve. And one thing we can do is in this word cloud is select a comment like excellent. Actually, we're going to do experience. Let's do that one. Experience is overall green. It's a positive word. So overall, you would expect to see in most of the comments experience is a positive word, but in some cases, if I scroll down just a little bit, we'll see there's 1,136 cases where it is positive, there are 85 where it's neutral, and there are 6 where it's negative. So in not all cases, like a word can basically have different meanings given the context. So sometimes it wasn't a great experience, and that's the reason why it shows up that way. And so if we want to dive into those negative ones, we can just click that link, and we'll see the negative comments here. Not the best experience. So it's really nice to see the comment at that level, and then we can go back to that region, go back to that department, and discuss with them and see if there's a way we can improve that level of experience as the organization as a whole. So one other thing I want to show you on this page.
Typically, patients are not as nice as to say not so good experience. I'm just saying.
They're usually very descriptive in the issues that are going on. So in the word search, we can just type in improve. And we can see how this organization, this region, is improving as a whole. So by typing in improve, we can get a wildcard of all of the words that contain improve, improvement, improving, improved overall, and see the sentiment trending score over time. So it kind of gives a trend view of like how well are we doing, I guess, towards this word across this region for a given point of time. It's really helpful for seeing these types of trends. So I think that's all I wanted to share as part of the demo portion. I'm going to turn it back over to Marina, and we'll go through some of the key takeaways as part of this. Cool, thanks.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys liked it. I love this dashboard. This is the most widely used dashboard in our organization. And I'll just talk a little bit about the impact that it had on Ochsner. So some of the benefits that we have seen have to do with the new data insights. Of course, we talked a lot about the need for different levels of aggregation, but then also the need to drill down to the patient level and to the very actionable comments section. So now we are able to do both. So we really were able to hit the requirements that our customers really set out for us, which is to have the data aggregated for top box and rank at different levels, but then also be able to drill down to the comments so that the coaches can take it back to the practices and actually mentor providers about how they can do better. Culture of transparency. The logic is all set at the code level. It's very difficult to change without prior approvals, change anything about the logic or the dashboard, the layouts. So basically we have worked through a year of iterations with the customer back and forth to get it to the point where it's just right, or at least they think it's just right for now. And everybody is kind of aware that the experience of care team owns that logic, and it's very difficult to change anything without everybody being aware of it. And of course, you're able to also prove to your providers who before maybe had a question about, I don't like my score, what actual encounters constitute that score. Now we're able to do just that. And speed of delivery. This has been huge, whereas before we were only able to provide updated scores every, a couple of times a month, so twice a month. Now we are able to provide updated scores daily. So basically as the surveys trickle in, and they trickle in daily, we're able to reflect back to those scores. So this has been also for, especially end of the year where everybody is trying to hit their goals, this has been a very positive impact. Since go live, and the go live was at the beginning of last year, February of last year, this year, 2019, February of 2019. You can see that the usage on our server has, I don't know, improved tenfold. I was going to say double, triple, but I don't even know what the word is for tenfold. But you can see, I hope that you can see, so this is the experience of care dashboard. This is the blue graph here, and the unique users on the server per month that are accessing this dashboard, as compared to other dashboards that we have on the server. And we have over 700 different dashboards, which are all kind of grayed out here. And some of them, you can see that if they're lucky, they have a little bit over 100 unique users per month, which isn't bad for a dashboard. But most of them are kind of like right around 20, 30, 40 people. The experience of care dashboard has over 700 unique users per month, and the number has been growing as we add more partners, as more campuses come online. So this has been for us as a team a good kind of validation that our product is being used, and this is always good to see. This photo I snapped at one of our system leadership meetings. So we have quarterly system leadership meetings where the executive team reports the state of the system, if you will, to the entire leadership team, which is close to a little bit over 3,000 people. So kind of large, very large, convention centers where we all gather. And this is our chief medical officer reporting on the improvements in our HCAP scores to the entire system using our dashboard, basically. So it was a proud moment for me. I snapped a photo of it, and I wanted to show it to you. But, of course, the most satisfying feedback we get every day from our coaches. So this is one of the quotes that we wanted to show you. So we recently piloted a provider shadowing program for primary care department, and we're able to tie specific observations to patient comments using this dashboard. So basically, they go to the practice, they shadow a patient from the point that they walk through the doors to the point where they leave, and they actually look for those opportunities for improvements, whether it's with a nurse or the registrar or the provider, the entire patient flow from walking in through the door to leaving. And then they're able to talk about those opportunities for improvement, but they're also able to back those up with data now using this dashboard and using the word cloud and using those patient comments. So this has been very helpful for them, something that they've never been able to do, and this again proves the value that Brody's solution is bringing to the organization every day. And just to sort of conclude, looking back at the project as a whole, and again, the project took us about a year to implement. It was very challenging at the data source level. It took a long time to iterate on the visuals and how we wanted to present them. But some of the takeaways looking back at the overall project is think outside the box when it comes to everything in your development cycle, to your data source, your visualization, your calculations. We all know that there are best practices, best ways of, or correct ways of doing things, but Tableau is flexible enough that it can give us a lot of options to hit even the really complex calculations and really complex visualizations. So think outside the box and be creative. Do not give up. Honestly, there were a lot of times throughout that year where we talked and we were like, this is going to be impossible. Yep. All the levels of aggregation that they want to do for the ranking calculation specifically was really difficult to do. But they sort of kept saying without that calculation, this is going to have very little value for us. So we kind of kept working on it and would step away from the project for a couple of weeks and then come back and be able to, improve and finally get to the point where we are today. So do not give up, even if something is really challenging. If you see value in your work for the organization, keep pushing, you will find the right solution. And trust your customers' feedback and direction. So again, a few times we had the negotiations where maybe you can just be fine with the top box. Maybe you don't really need the ranking calculation. Why do you need to know that? And they kept pushing back and saying, no, we absolutely need to have it. Additionally, when it comes to visualization specifically, I know as developers, we all tend to do this. We tend to come up with the coolest, craziest graph and be very proud of it and hoping that it will wow the customers, and it does once, right? It will wow them once and they will never look at it again because that's not what we need. And so as a developer, you really need to kind of set aside your ego and listen to that customer feedback. Maybe if you need to dial it down a little bit to make it actionable for them, you really need to listen to your customer feedback. And with that, babies and dogs, vote for us on the app. That's it. We will take any questions.